Hello. Hello, everyone. I think we are back to this. Sorry, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Totally forgot to do this. Today, I'm going to be having Stephen with me today to talk about open source projects in Nigeria, his own open source project, and some of the amazing things that he's building. Oh, I just said myself. My bad. So, yeah, just to jump right into it, Stephen. Uh, Hello.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Ace. Nice to be
How's it
here.
going, man?
Pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. I'm a little, I don't know, nervous or something. Usually, like conversations are supposed to be easy, so hopefully it'll go pretty nicely.
I mean, yeah, there's no reason to be nervous, first of all. It's just me and you. Nobody's going to come on to beat us up. So that's like out of the way. Secondly, we just want to talk about the amazing things that you've been working on, what you have in the pipeline, and cool. But first things first, we Stephen. I wanted to be dramatic with that question. Like, who are you?
It's usually the hardest question to answer because I mean, like I'm me, right? I'm with myself all the time. But
Right.
I think as is relevant to this conversation, I am a software engineer. I work for Just Watch, which is this fantastic company in Germany. You should all get it. Like, do you want to know what's showing in Amazon Prime versus what's showing in Netflix? Just watch. Anyways.
Mhm.
But I also like just building stuff. So I've built quite a number of things by myself, like on the side. Um, and I also do some open source work, among which is SQL Boiler, which is this fantastic ORM for Go, which I am now the maintainer. I did not start it, to be very clear.
Yeah.
So that's actually a nice story in itself. But I'm the current maintainer of SQL Boiler, which um, which is as far as open source goes, probably the biggest thing I'm doing. So that's nice.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
see it go ORM.
Yeah. So for typed languages, it gets kind of finicky to do ORM stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of the benefit of using um, a typed language is for type safety. And then when you're doing like this whole ORM stuff, it'll be nice to have that type safety extend. For example, it will be nice if your models had like property names and types that matched what's in your database, right?
Yeah. Right.
Um, so one way other ORMs did it is to have you handwrite it. So if you write this property, you maybe put a tag or something that says it maps to this column, then it works. Um, but that means that each time you change anything about your database, you have to change it in two places. If not, you get some very annoying runtime error that some
Mm-hmm.
column does not exist, so it doesn't know how to map something to another thing. Um, which is where SQL Boiler is kind of fancy because what it does is you run the tool and it generates your ORM code from your database schema.
From a
Like it
database. Yeah.
reads the schema, the types, the relationships, and it generates your code. So you get instant type safety. Some people are put off by the amount of code it generates. I don't think it's too much. It's like, I don't know, three, depend on the size of your table. Let's say 300
Yeah.
lines per table. So I don't think it's too much. And Go's compilation is pretty fast, so it's not like it now makes your code compile for 5 seconds or anything. Um,
Right.
yeah, so that's SQL Boiler. And then I started using it, like I was using it for a while. I use it on all my projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I reached out to the, like I saw some comment on the issue that, on an issue that the maintainer, like the main guy at least that I noticed was maintaining it was a bit, um, like wasn't, didn't have as much time to dedicate to it. So I see this and
Right.
I sent a message to him like, hey, do you want some help? it
Right.
was yeah. So and then I think we went back and forth like 2, 3 emails, and then said, "All right, sure." And that's how that
Awesome.
happened, which is a pretty nice story, I would say. It's pretty
Yeah,
fun.
so that is a very good story. I mean, the purpose of this video today is to talk about like open source creators out of Nigeria, and also talk about the Made in Nigeria project, which is a collection of all these projects that a lot of, I mean, my fellow Nigerians have built, regardless of where they are. I mean, you're currently in Germany, but you're Nigerian through through.
Yeah, yeah.
So the focus of the Made in Nigeria project is mostly for open source projects built by Nigerians, but address like world problems. So it's not just about me
Yeah.
building a project that literally addresses something that's very unique to me in my street or something like that. But it can literally be used by anybody, whether they're in Australia, whether they're in China. Like it's a global use project, and we've had like a ton of contribution, a ton of projects, some of which include yours. Um, and most importantly,
Yeah.
as well, this month is the month of October. So Oktoberfest is going down where a ton of people are encouraged to not only contribute to open source for the first time, but like just embrace that practice of contributing to open source. And that is why we are here. I do have a few questions for you in the sense of like, for you personally, how did you like get into open source? Like for anyone that also wants to get into open source, how did you get into open source? Just
Hmm.
with the entire concept of how did you get on board with that concept? And how did you get around making your first open source contribution before even getting to a point where you're creating your own project that you can tag like, hey, I'm building this project and it's open source. How did you get to
Um,
that point?
so it's quite interesting. I don't know. I think I opened my GitHub account for the first time when I was learning Git. As with many people, I couldn't for the life of me figure out the difference.
Yeah.
um, and I was just basically banging my head on a wall. So that's when I created the account, but I didn't touch it for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like the first couple of things I pushed were for writing articles because sometimes, like, you write an article, I think then with like Scotch.io, you write an article and you want to link to like sample code or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was one. For example, I had this, like, I wrote this article about adding two-factor authentication to Laravel, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted like this thing that you could just clone, like it's a Laravel project and it's just maybe like 5 lines of change or something. I think that's how I first started like putting anything there. Um, because aside from that, like, um, it's what it is, right? Like you don't as much. I think especially at that point, I wasn't necessarily concerned about it being open source so that
Open source,
someone else can.
right.
It's just,
Right.
oh, there's this place that people can go and see your code. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which interestingly is kind of at the root of open source, but very honestly, at that point, it was more just like the best tool if you are going to link to a project that you want someone to be able to copy and paste or something. Felt like the best tool for the job.
Right. That makes sense.
Um, then much later down the line, I think like as far as contribution goes, um, personally, I feel like the best way is to contribute to something you use. Like if you find an issue with it or you find some problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think most of like even up till today, most of the thing projects I contribute to is that I'm using it, and then there's something, right? Something went wrong. For example, for this SQL boiler, one issue I raised, like I think one of the first issue I raised was that you can't. It was difficult to reuse queries. Like let's say here's an example. Let's say you're doing pagination and you want
Yeah.
to get the list, but then remove like the limit and then count everything, right? Like so that you know, okay, we have let's say 500 total projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
So assuming you wanted to do that, you may need to reuse the query, like run the same because you've already built, you've added your filters, you've added your stuff. So it was difficult to do that, and I raised an issue for it. That's it. Oh, I asked, oh, how can we do this? And it was like, I don't know. Like the way it's currently built, it's hard to do that because there's some caching going on when you run a
Yeah.
query. But if you want, like if you want to do, like
Yeah.
if you send in a PR, I'll look at it. And I know I think I did a PR, and he was like, "Nah, this doesn't feel right." And I was like, "Okay, I'll come back to it if anything changed." Like nothing
I can
changed.
imagine. Okay, you
Um,
remind me of
but
my Git story. Sorry. So funny enough, I used to build like random applications, Firefox app, Windows applications when I was in school. So the first time I wanted to deploy something like a Facebook app or something like that, they were like, use Git to set this thing up. And I'm like, what is Git? So I looked at the Facebook doc. I don't know which Facebook tool it was, I can't remember. But I looked at the Facebook documentation that year and I was just seeing the Git commands. I'm like, is this a language? Is this I don't what do you mean you use Git? I mean, now that I look back, I realize that of course Git has always been Git, right? So I probably just did not
yeah.
put the commands, right? But I'm like, this is a language, this is a new framework. I don't know what this Git is. So I just closed it up. Then when I went to 1000 for the first time, I met Mark and he was like, I did an interview with Mark and he's like, oh yeah, starts today. So they're like, wanted to set up the Hotels NG project with me. And I was like, do you have Git? And I'm like, hey God, Git has followed me here. So I was like, no, I don't know how to use Git, blah blah blah. And on that spot, it just showed me like the first bit, you download Git, download this first, like take this first few commands, Git pull, Git fork, like I was like, oh, so this is what Facebook was trying to show me.
Ironically, my own Git, like the first time I understood Git was in the HNG internship, like that first one, right? So we are all there, and they're like, everybody pull this project, add your name, push it. And
Yeah.
the guy, like conflict, merge conflict, like it was trial by fire. And
I
then
can imagine.
people kept checking in node modules and vendor, and you would delete it and it will come back. Or the annoying one is where you delete something and then you discover magically it has deleted in everybody's computer.
Nah, and Git is like a whole world of it. So you just need to like understand the
Yeah.
fundamentals.
Yeah, it's very interesting because like once you just wrap your head around like the idea, then it makes so much sense. Yeah,
Right.
that's very true.
So we actually have three projects
Yeah.
of yours right now chilling
Mm.
on Made in Nigeria. So Alibaba. Once you have more than one, you're like legendist. I
Eh,
think I have just one. Let me see my own first. I think I have like
no,
I
it
have
can't
32.
be.
Let's move it. Let's move it. Although most of my own are probably not they're outdated at this point. Actually, one of the things we want to do is end up to like just clean up some of the no longer maintained projects.
Mm,
Maybe not clean them, or maybe like archive them. Like we put a tag on them that they're archived.
yeah,
At
a
the same
tag
time,
or
just
something.
keep it as or any project is actually actively maintained. But yeah, let's
Yeah.
just go to your own project so we don't take too much of your time today. You have three amazing projects here that clearly they meet the requirements of the Made in Nigeria projects. They have like a ton of stars. People have confirmed that they use them. I mean, that's it. That's the whole purpose of the stars. Like, oh, I see this project, I like it, I use it, or whatever the case is. And
Yeah.
also the functionalities are like, I mean, they're for global use. Anyone can literally use them. I mean, anyone that uses
Mm-hmm.
Go or builds in Go, because you are a Go developer. So we can take them one by one and just
Mm-hmm.
talk about um, what you about the project, how you got started, what kind of contributions you are looking for. That'll be
All
cool.
right. So I'll start with
You,
Bob.
do
Bob.
you want to share your screen instead so that you can move around
All right. All
freely?
right.
Yeah.
Let me do that. Which one? Which? Let me
So I
see.
think you can. Yeah, I was gonna copy the.
Um. So Bob is interesting in the sense that as I have mentioned, I'm maintaining SQL Boiler, right? And it's been on V4 for a while. And like I was talking with the other maintainer about V5, right? Because V5 gives you a chance to do a lot of breaking changes. Also, Go generics came to Go earlier this year, so it's a chance to reduce the amount of generated code with generics. Um, but there's also several long-standing things in SQL Boiler that could very use like a rewrite in quotes and like a rewrite with which includes breaking changes. So because we're
Yeah.
doing a major version, we're thinking about everything that we can break, let's break it once. Although the more I think about it, maybe that's because it makes migration very hard. But so Bob kind of started as a thought process, like if I was rewriting SQL Boiler, like if I had a blank slate, no backwards compatibility to think about, how would you do it? Because one issue about SQL boiler is the query builder. The query builder works well enough, but it could be better. Also, the query builder is shared for all dialects. Like right now, if you go to drivers, you see that at least officially there's SQL Server, MySQL, Postgres, and SQLite. And I
Yeah.
think there's a maintained cockroach DB driver, right? Um, and all of these are sharing the same, like the same query builder, which makes it's hard to support dialect specific things. For example, select distinct. I think pretty much all of them support it. Select distinct on is Postgres specific, right? Um, Postgres and SQLite have limit and offset. I think SQL Server has like top and take, something like that. So there's all these like little things, and it's hard to support all of them across all the dialects. So you now end up with like a limited subset of things you can support, and B, you end up with sometimes queries that don't actually work. Like the builder will allow you build the query, but it doesn't work. For example, the current query builder allows you to do join statements in a delete query, which I think it works for MySQL, but it doesn't work for Postgres. So things like that. So Bob was more or less like, I'm going to be dialect specific, A, and I'm going to basically build the query builder for each dialect based on the specification. Like if I type select here, select, you can see because I spent a lot of time on these pages. I'm not even joking. So I'll be like looking at this and understanding because this is literally the specification for Postgres select, right? Are you
Right.
still there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
here.
Right. So this is literally the specification. I'm looking at this and I'm building the query builder. So um the I think the exciting thing about Bob is that it is pretty much any query you can build with this, you can represent in a Bob query. So I think that's pretty fantastic if I do say so myself. Um, and of course, you can select, like, for example, there's create table and create index, and those are even like those are more, but I think for
Yeah.
most use, these are the four important ones. So these are all implemented, and then there's SQL Server. So Bob began as like, if I had to rewrite um,
That's good, brother.
um, SQL Boiler's query builder, at least starting with the query builder, with the power of
Yeah.
generics and everything I've seen about maintaining SQL Boiler, how will I do it? And that's how
So,
this is.
do you have like future plans to integrate Bob to SQL boiler, as like to replace
Eh,
the query builder?
Um, I don't know. It's two things. Like it's not easy to decide because over time it started with similarish principles, right? And
Yeah.
like if you look at the way the query is built, it looks sort of similar to SQL Boiler's query builder, but
Right.
it has diverged quite a bit. And I am well aware that, for example, if you take Angular JS and Angular 2, if the things like if I upgrade to SQL Boiler V5 and I have to spend 2 days fixing all the new type errors, like that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So that's not an easy decision to make, so to speak. I mean, I really like how this works. I don't know if it is beneficial to force these breaking changes because SQL is still a fantastic thing, even with its limitations. It still works very well. So I don't know if it's worth it forcing everybody to write all their code just
Right.
for this reason. So I'm not quite sure. I think
I mean,
sorry, I, hmm?
I was gonna say you've gathered a ton of stats. So I'm definitely sure a couple of people have tried it out already and like what you built here. So that is like a positive reinforcement thing.
Yeah, it is because I know I shared it the first time. Okay, so these benchmarks are The, so I actually did this benchmark because I want to see how we stacked against other query builders, Goku, SQ,
Yeah.
and Squirrel. And it was doing pretty well. The first time it was like two times as fast, and I was very proud of that. The difference is not as much anymore, but it's still generally faster. For example, Bob is like
That is saying a lot.
4,500. Eh?
That is saying a lot.
Yeah, but it's not as dramatic anymore. And to be fair, all of them are fast enough that like this is not the bottleneck in your application.
We have
Um,
someone in the audience, Birante. Thank you for stopping
uh,
by. He thinks the project is really awesome. So
oh, thank
yeah.
you. Um, so I know I shared it on Reddit a few times, and it's like, of course, there are people who really don't like ORMs and anything like their mantra is just write SQL,
Like why can't
which
you just write it?
yeah, which is fair because SQL is beautiful. Like the more I understand, especially Postgres,
Hmm.
but to be fair, most of the major DB systems they all have like similar levels of features, so to speak, right? So, but the more I dig into just the amount of things you can express in queries and you can be like you can force your database to do for you, the more fantastic this seems. And I understand people who say just write SQL because if you don't properly understand SQL, you are doing yourself a disservice, especially if you keep working with SQL databases. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one thing if you don't need to, but if you're working with it, like understanding it is pretty nice.
I mean, I think
About
if you understand SQL like fundamentally initially, it also helps you like use this query builders because you know how to combine stuff together, not just I don't know mix and match.
true, true, but funny enough, I think it's when I was so I had a period where I was working primarily with Rails and
Yeah,
Active Record. And that's when I understood how far away an ORM can be
from
from
SQL
code
itself.
from SQL. Like it's not a bad thing because it's like magic. And Ruby is the most expressive language I've ever come across. So the things Active Record allow you to do, and you have
Yeah,
no idea that each of these is, let's say, a database call or a relationship or a join or a like it's so abstracted away that it's easy to forget. It has its own
right.
benefit in the sense that it's such a pleasure to work with.
I'm surprised you
But
chose Ruby first because I know you started with Laravel, and for me, I did Laravel most of the time, and the active record was pretty decent as well. I mean, Laravel itself was built like
eloquent.
following Ruby on Rails,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah, but like I met the senior brother.
yeah, I never used Rails, so my bad.
Yeah. And ironically, I didn't use Ruby as sorry, PHP. I mean, I used PHP very actively for like a year and a half, right?
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
at a point that was the majority of my career. But more and more, it's like farther and farther away. Is
I
that
can
so?
imagine.
But
Can
but
imagine.
but but the thing is, I think as far as sticking to the standards, like how close it is to SQL, I think Bob is a lot like Tailwind to CSS, where it's a lot better if you know,
Hmm.
like if you know the underlying thing. Yeah,
I
because
mean,
what Bob
let's
is
go back
actually
to
doing is,
Bob's
hmm?
page. You should go back to Bob's page. Yeah,
Aren't we on Bob's page? Oh no, we're
are you
not.
on the
Oh, we're
benchmark
not.
thing?
Let me find the okay. So so it's like if you're, for example, let me here are the examples, right? So which is speaking of possible contributions, this is one thing I really want contributions of, not even necessarily the code, just like write a query like this. Of course, this is a very simple this, like
Yeah,
simple select. Um, but write a query like this, we'll add it to the tests, and from the tests I literally generate these examples, so it's like very concrete. So it's like
So
you
that's
see
that's
this.
that's definitely a way for anyone that wants to contribute to write additional queries like this, so they can generate
Yeah.
example.
Or you can take a query you use at work on your project and just strip it and see, like, it even lets you feel a how building a query with this will look like, because
Right.
that's part of, because for example this is a pretty wonky query, which most query builders will not be able to, because this is a, oh no, not this one, I think it's this one. This, you're doing like a window function over something else, which is just like, honestly, I have maybe needed to write a query like this once in all my years of development, which is why it's understandable that many query builders will not just support doing something like this, because the one time you need this, you can write it as raw SQL,
Right.
right? But like, for example, even that can be expressed in Bob. Um, and as you can see, like all these columns, this over this partition by, like you can see the partition by, that's this. You can see order by. So it's like, to be able to even use this properly, you need to like know what you're writing. So I think in that sense, it's very close to the metal. Um,
To
yeah.
digress a bit, we have Fisayo in the audience, and he's asking, why is he called Bob? Is that your nickname?
I think there's this like cartoon called Bob the Builder. That's not.
Welcome to the stream, Fisayo. Thank you for joining us. I mean that
Yeah, literally,
right.
like it's so that's why, like, it's hard to name things, people.
Anyway, so I mean, let's not like digress too much. So at the end of the day, this is Bob, SQL query builder, and you are definitely looking for contributions, especially in the Oktoberfest period. So if
Yeah.
anyone wants to make contributions to Bob, definitely check it out.
Yeah.
What about your other project? I think we have two more.
Before that, I would say, as far as contributions go,
Yeah.
the easy contributions are just give me SQL queries. If you don't even know how to express them in Bob, you can, here, let me go to the test, for example, expression on a dialects. Let's see, Postgres, select test, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can add the test, right, with the expected SQL,
SQL
right?
output. Yeah.
And then just, if that's the like if that's the pull request, that's fine, and then I will like complete it. So so you don't necessarily need to make the test pass, just bring a valid query, and then we can, I guess that's the whole thing about open source and working together.
Yeah. That
um
makes sense.
and then if for more, let's say, challenging contributions, is implementing SQL Server. It will need, like, you'll need to like look at one of the implemented dialects to
And
sort of
replicate.
get a feel for how it works, and you will have to read a lot of documentation on SQL Server to understand dialect. But, and to also clarify, they don't all need to be implemented at once. You can implement maybe only delete, and that's fine too. Yeah,
One at a time, anyways. So that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
Right. So we
So
have good mark next.
yes. So Goldmark is okay. So Goldmark PDF. So let's start from Goldmark, because Goldmark PDF is a PDF renderer for Goldmark. Goldmark is a Markdown parser, right? And I
Right.
think it's fantastic. Because of like the creator, this guy. I think he thought about it pretty well, and he tried to be compliant with Common Mark. For those that don't know, while the basics of Markdown are the same as you'll expect anywhere, um, Markdown gets really hairy, and there's all sorts of dialects. There's like a PHP Markdown that has like footnotes and some stuff. There is like there's GitHub flavored Markdown. The most popular is Common Mark, and GitHub flavored
Standard.
Markdown is actually like a superset of Common Mark. So this guy chose to be as compliant as possible with Common Mark, And then the thing is actually broken into a parser and a renderer. So you can add parser options, you can add extensions, but there's now also a renderer. And so what the architecture of the project is, you give it a markdown like text, and
Yeah.
then it breaks it down into an abstract syntax tree, and then you can write a renderer that pushes it into into a format. For example, by default, there's like the HTML renderer,
HTML.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
which is the default one. Um, and that is typically most times when you're doing Markdown, you want to push it to HTML. And so what Goldmark PDF does is it switches your renderer, or if you use it as your renderer, it will give you PDF.
So you export it to PDF
Um,
version.
yeah, well, you get bytes of a PDF and you can write it to a file or save it on the internet or something. But it
So
gives you a PDF.
let me paint a picture. So basically, good mark. I'm assuming good mark is specifically for Go, right? Um,
Yeah.
you can take in any input, could be a markdown file, right? And you can pass it,
Hmm.
and then choose to display it in any format. Could be like an HTML version of it,
Yes.
or you
Yes.
just like convert it to a PDF byte, which your project does, good mark PDF, and then you can choose to either display that on the
Yes.
page or like export it to an external file, right?
Yes. Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. So like there's input output. Goldmark. You can even switch the parser. I know there are other parsers, or you can add parser options. For example, GitHub flavored Markdown has other Markdowns formats sprinkled in it, right?
Hmm.
And you can add that as a parser option to understand these nodes, right? You can add footnotes. So just bunch of stuff, right? And then it
Yeah.
passes the markdown text, and then it converts it into is an abstract syntax tree. For those who do not understand, it's like an encode representation of the markdown file, right? For
Yeah.
example, they would say, oh, we have a paragraph node here. We have an image node that has the source as this, the
Yeah.
destination as this, yeah? And then you can write a renderer that takes this abstract syntax tree and converts it into something. By default, that is HTML. If you use Goldmark PDF, that is PDF. Um,
I
so,
mean, so basically
um,
for this PDF thing, yeah, I'm actually curious because recently, I don't know if anyone in the audience knows. So I was working on this documentation website.
mhm,
Actually, Fatawi's new documentation is a custom built documentation. So
mhm,
the plan that we needed to do there was for easy updating, document everything in Markdown, right? And as
mhm,
everything is documented in Markdown, you want to move it to like a custom environment. You have your own unique way you want to show, like say list items, images, whatever the case is. So I was using Noxt content, and what Noxt content it comes with like a parser. I think it's Remark. I think that's the Markdown parser that
okay,
they use. So
okay,
once it passes into this like these entities, it's still up to me. And it converts to like what's it called in HTML because that's the foundation, right? But it's still up to me to style or choose how I want to render each of these elements. So I'm actually curious when it comes to like the PDF version. Are you rendering the HTML with like a CSS? No, there's CSS for like screen for print for
mm,
cases.
no. So I know there's some like PDF renderers that do that, which is like they render it to HTML and use like
And
some
it's played. Yeah.
headless browser thing. Now that's something that genuinely it's probably easier in like JavaScript. Um, but in Go, like to basically require that to render something to PDF, you have to have a browser present is
Mm-hmm.
a bit much, right? Because
So
maybe it
how do
runs
you
on your
format?
server. So,
Yeah.
um, first is I'm also leveraging another PDF thing. I can't remember which one. I tried both of them. One worked better than the other. I was
Oh, I see.
working on using the other one, but I don't think I ever finished that. So yeah, I think this is the one that was working better. So this is a package for generating PDF. So
Roger.
what I've basically then done is to basically write a something that converts like a bridge between gold
Yeah.
max
Those, yeah.
abstract syntax
The
tree
PDF
and this.
creator.
And you know what I learned about PDFs?
Oh, what is that?
PDFs are closer to images than documents.
I mean,
It's
it does make sense if you think about it. Because you can't edit a
no,
PDF, right?
yeah, like it was very interesting to find out because so I've done some image generation thingy with because Go has like this image library, and if you want to
Okay.
like you can um self plug just real quick. So if you like on Swish, which is my product, like all these
I should note
images
that
you
that opened really fast, by the
so if you don't set your own image for a blog post, it will auto
way. Yeah.
generate one because all these are really nice, especially when you share it. And like I had to generate this image from like the title, the tags, the name of the blog, the link of the
Yeah, I'm
blog,
doing something similar at the moment too. I don't know if you've
right?
noticed it on
And
the blog.
yeah. And now to obviously to do this, you have to draw the image, you have to put this here, put that here. And it was very similar to writing a PDF, although I'm more annoying. I would say PDFs are even more annoying.
That's the
Because
thing.
yeah, like
But yeah,
so
that makes
I did
sense.
well.
That does make
Yeah, so it's a lot about drawing cells and like if you see this now, it says set font. You have to write like cell, cell. There are some helpers I think to write like a line, but you have like it's very interesting. Like you set X, set Y, and you do your calculation, like anything and everything just
Yeah,
goes
put
in.
each page. Wow. That's
Yeah, and
insane.
like it's speaking of fonts, by the way, it's interesting that by default, I think the PDF specification comes with like four fonts, like Arial, which is I think sans serif, Times New
Hmm.
Roman, which is serif, Korea, which is monospace, maybe one more font, which I can't remember, but primarily three fonts. And if you want to add another font, do you know what you have to do? You have to basically embed the entire font into the PDF, which will make the PDF bigger, obviously.
That's
But that's
insane.
really interesting. Yeah, which is why, yeah, I know you probably like find some PDF and you see it's maybe like 50 megabytes, and you're asking yourself like, what's in it? It's probably fonts and images because a similar thing, like the image is literally embedded into it.
Right. That's true. That makes
So
sense.
so it
So
was
what
it
kind of
was really
contributions?
fun.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know because I think it works.
Mm-hmm.
I did plan kind of a rewrite because I think it's really brittle. Like this is me being very honest. I think it's quite brittle. By the way, I was quite proud about this, like making the code come out in dark background. Okay.
That's
Oh,
what I was asking. Like, how do you render it? It does look pretty cheap.
yeah, the background, you have to mark the cell you want and you have to set the background color of the cells. And on top of that, like the margin between this and top, like you have to now basically insert the margin because you see, like the typical margin of the page is here, but I want the code to start somewhere else,
Yeah.
right? And PDF by default doesn't like roll over, like it doesn't line wrap, so you have to
Yeah.
manually
Set it up.
wrap the line. Like it's interesting. I don't know if I can. So as far as contributions, I don't know if I can find it now. But there's a like a new there's some PDF Go PDF like library thing. Let me see if I can find it in my stats because I think I started it when I found it. Um, which means that please be here. Nope, it's not here. Yeah. Which I think from my cursory look at that library, I felt like it would be much easier to render PDF with that library. So my current plan, honestly, is to basically nuke all of this and rewrite the PDF rendering with that because this, while it's brilliant, it's very, very like I'm not even confident I can go into it and properly understand what's happening anymore.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you, I know there's one issue that's been here like forever about like tables. Yeah. By the way, about contributing. Issues like very good issues are very helpful if you find a bug. Like this guy, he gives me a link to literally a markdown file, right?
Mhm.
And also gives me a link, like because you can attach files here, right? I think yeah, you
Yeah,
can attach file and the generated PDF, so I could see what went wrong, which is very like this one. I don't do thumbs up now so that the guy will not know that I remember. um, but yeah, so I don't know if someone can figure this out, I would appreciate that. In the meantime, if you like find, I don't know, maybe I'll add an issue about that, like this new
yeah,
PDF library, and just like try and rewrite it because that one also, I think they also had a really nice like architecture where there was a back end and a front end for the PDF rendering, and you could sort of plug and play. So I'll be really interested in like trying that out and seeing if it makes this more robust. Yeah, yeah.
that makes sense. I think we have one more project to check out.
Yes, orchestra.
Orchestra. Awesome.
Sometimes I almost wish I named it something different, but I really like the name.
Why did you choose orchestra?
So
That's terrible.
um, so the idea is okay. If we back up a little bit, Go makes it really easy to start a HTTP server. So let's say you're building web things, you can easily start
Yeah.
a HTTP server from your code. But by default, if someone presses Control C, it will just shut down everything, which is not graceful. Which means if your web server was serving any content, it just stops somewhere in the middle. Um, so there's a way to do a graceful shutdown where you basically give it a signal to stop, right? And then
Right.
when it stops, you can exit, which is usually like when for like programs, when you're running a program and you receive an interrupt signal or a terminate signal, it's typically how you should handle it. The whole like crashing shutdown is usually meant for like a kill signal, which down your program will not get a choice anyway because the OS will kill it. um, um, but so one of the first things when if you want to build before you deploy like your Go HTTP server, they'll tell you to add graceful shutdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is easy enough for one thing, right? Wait, by the way, I think I wrote a whole article about this, right? Sorry, give me a moment. Um, um, what do I name it? No, 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 no. Yeah, this gracefully shutting down. Yeah. So you have a like this your typical Go HTTP server, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you want to do graceful shutdown, it becomes something like this, right? Which is fine. But the thing is, this is one blocking process, right? So um the way your program will work is that when it gets to this listen and serve, it will block there. It will keep listening on the port and it will keep serving your content. And then when you ask it to shut down, like with this server shutdown, it will shut down. But like your code literally gets stuck here until the end of the program.
Yeah.
Now, if you ever need another long running process, let's say you want a background worker that is, I don't know, sending out notifications or something, or you want to run two servers, which technically it's possible, right? You start one on, let's say, port 80 and another on like port
On the board.
8080, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then this code, like the complexity just balloons, right? Like this is my own pseudocode of two workers, right? That's all of this. And this is like very toy, no setup. I'm just starting a random HTTP server, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what Orchestra does is you give it a bunch of these servers, like a bunch of these, I call them players. It's like an orchestra, and you have like people playing your instruments. um, you give it a bunch of these players, and it will coordinate all of this. When any of them shuts down, it will send a signal to all of them to shut down, that type of thing, right?
That makes
So
sense.
going back to orchestra, it looks something like, so you need a player that implements this interface. So there's an interface that takes a context. Um, in Go, you can use a context to signal when something should shut down, right? So you just need something that has a method called play that will take a context and will shut down when the context tells it to, right?
Yeah.
And then if you have a bunch of these, you pass it into a conductor. Where is it? You pass
You
it
took
into
the
a
orchestra name
conductor.
seriously.
You said?
So I took the orchestra name seriously.
Yeah. So you pass it to a conductor with like a player, as like the map is to know the name of the player, and then a duration so that in case a player is misbehaving, let's say, hey, everybody shut down or somebody refuses to hear what, you kill it anyways. Um, and ironically, the conductor implements this interface so you can make like a conductor of conductors and etc. So it's really helpful for me. Like I used I created this one specifically because I use it on my projects, for example, Swish, right?
Yeah.
Um, on like on Swish, I have the main server running. This demo server that you can see demo.swish.inc.
Right.
Okay, that one's run on a different place. But I have the main server running. I have a worker that checks if any images to be generated, like these images, right? To check if these images are to be generated and generates them. I have different like long running processes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to coordinate all of them, I have just one top level conductor that takes everything. That's it.
That
Um,
gives them change.
yeah, so
Self
I created
them.
this just because I needed it. Um,
Right.
and so this article was basically my thought process around it. Like I both tell you how to do it, and then like I'm like, well, have orchestra.
There's a package for it.
You want to make it easier. So I think it's
Awesome.
pretty simple. The entire thing is relatively small. And
Mhm.
then that's it. Yeah.
I'm assuming you don't need any contributions for this, do you?
No, not really. Except maybe I don't know. I can't think of anything I would want to add. If you can think of something, maybe send me a message or put an issue or something, and or maybe I should turn on discussions. I know we have to turn that on here.
Right.
Um, but maybe we can talk about it. But I think for the most part, it's complete. Excuse me. Except someone sees a bug or something. Yeah. But
Right.
um,
That makes sense. I mean, I think that's the projects that we've showcased today. For those that are just joining, anyone that is still on the stream, I can see a few viewers. Stephen joined us today to talk about, I mean, open source project that he has been building, that is building, and it's the month of October 1st. So for anyone that wants to break into open source, for anyone that has been contributing to open source and wants to like, I mean, find out new projects that are exciting to build, and also most importantly, to be honest, also showcasing the creators that are behind some of these projects that are made in Nigeria. And it's my pleasure that we get to meet Steven today and say that he doesn't have two heads. I mean, he's wearing glasses, so he has four eyes, but I don't think that should stop you. And literally
uh,
anyone can start building or can contribute. I mean, just for
yeah.
me personally, I think it's like a very good learning process and also a way to put yourself, like test yourself in terms of these are things that you can build, things you can learn, and just
Um.
find out that you're already world class, so to say. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like you have something to say about that. Like, are there any
No,
things like you
I
just
think it's just if you build something, like if you have to do something that you need personally, just
yeah?
put it out there. I don't know about other ecosystems, but Go makes this extremely easy because packages are literally from Git repositories. So it's not like you have to fiddle with npm or composer or
Mm-hmm.
something. Like
Straight to GitHub.
just put it there. right? And it's very, you'll be surprised how many people are looking for it. Of course, don't just and like um you can build something just because you want to learn, but as far as like useful things go, um it's fine to, like, if you look like you've tried out other stuff, none is meeting your needs, it's very likely you're not the only person that feels that way. So
Most
just put
likely.
it out there. If share it in a few places. If you don't have lots of Twitter followers, that's fine. You can share it on Reddit because like
Mhm.
every language has a subreddit, and there are people that are very passionate
I
here.
use Reddit more
Um,
actually. I barely use it.
you say
I said I
you
should use
don't use
Reddit
Reddit?
more actually. I barely
Yeah, I
do.
think you just curate your. If you stay in a well moderated subreddit, is actually very pleasant. I would say. Like people always say about how Reddit is very savage, but I don't think it is. Like the attitude, but like every community, things shift from from like subreddit to subreddit. So know
Right.
the vibe of the subreddit you're in and act
Right.
accordingly. Um,
Right.
so share it, get feedback, be polite, especially if you're leaving an issue on someone's code. Please be polite. Like you're not paying them. Okay. Um, but really, just do your stuff.
Oh,
It's
mm.
really straightforward, I would say.
That makes sense. We have about wow, people are joining now. We have about 7 viewers. I don't know if anyone has questions for you as we're about to wrap this up. If you're watching, hello. If you have any questions for Steven, now's the time to drop it. If you do not have any questions, we'll start wrapping up to say our goodbyes. It's been fun. This is Steven. You can follow him on GitHub. I mean, from there, I think you can find his Twitter. Right. So he's one of the amazing open source contributors right from Nigeria. He has a couple of projects on the Made in Nigeria project repository that he has shared with us today, which I think is amazing. So if you are looking for projects to contribute to, check out some of the projects on his profile. So I'm not seeing any questions. So thank you so much for your time, Stephen. It's been a pleasure. I would assume you don't feel nervous anymore. This was pretty chill. So
Nah, not at all. Hey, like, which I think you've done an amazing job because I didn't feel nervous at all. So thank
amazing,
you very
awesome.
much for having me. Which is
Oh
better,
god,
PHP or Go?
Pizza is just here to throw you at this point.
Well, in my professional experience, I think
Right.
everybody should use small talk. It's the only true language. Everybody else is copying. But no,
So
like
what is it?
everybody
What's the
use.
neutral language? I didn't get that.
I said small talk, which I've never used by the way. I just know it's a language. Yeah. But I think I don't know. I personally prefer Go, but
Right.
PHP is fantastic. I've been meaning, like, I saw stuff on like PHP 8 and PHP, and I'm like, I just want to write small PHP again, just small,
Just
not
to
too
test
much.
it.
Yeah.
I think
Because
about
it
that
looks
too
so
these days.
nice. It looks so nice. Looks so
Yeah.
nice.
I'm writing mostly JavaScript these days. I'm like, I remember those days when Laravel just the boss for it. Like, oh god.
Every time I write JavaScript, it stresses me.
I can imagine. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so
But
much,
but,
Steven. Oh,
yeah.
you wanted to say something? Sorry.
No, I said it's fun. It's all fun. Use
Oh,
different things. Try it out.
awesome.
My
So yeah, thank
pleasure. Really,
everyone
my pleasure.
uh,
Thank
for
you.
stopping by. Thank you for gracing us with your presence, Steven. Cheers, everyone. Goodbye.
Cheers. Bye.